teachers, grad students, educators. I'm Haley here at Teacher's Pet, and today it is time for our monthly look back and retrospective for April. So what we're going to do in this monthly series is grab our planners, our journals, our schedules, open up our class shells, and just do a quick, run through, review, what I call a retrospective on how the last month in our classrooms, in our courses, in our research, our service, all of those elements of our jobs went. Now, what is a retrospective? Well, it is a really great tool that we use. I teach technical writing and technical communication. And so a big thing that I do with all my students is whenever they have an assignment, they turn in, 1 to 2 page retrospective, basically a look back on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We ask really 3 kind of key questions within that SWOT analysis of, what were our goals and how well did we execute on those? So there's kind of an assessment piece. And then we want to reflect on our decision making and what choices did we make that led to those outcomes, kind of getting into that creative process. And last, we talk about some lessons learned. What do we want to change and what do we want to carry forward? So I love that practice into my classrooms because my students who spend that time really assessing their own work and then explaining, communicating it out to me. I spent a long time reading their retros, and it has definitely led to higher quality projects overall because they're taking that time to actually reflect on what they're doing, why they're doing it, and helps them kind of make different choices and take a little bit more from their lessons and learning. So I always like to use that in my real life as well to keep iterating and improving on my projects and my course page designs and just my overall pedagogical approach to teaching. So what we're going to do, I'm going to flip in and give you a little bit of a tour of, my Canvas shell just from this past month. So setting up, okay, what is it that I needed to do and what did my classrooms accomplish in April? And then we will flip back through my bullet journal, each of those kind of weekly spreads as I start to really think about, okay, what were the choices that I made that led to different outcomes? And finally, what is it that, I want to adjust and change moving forward. So I'm going through all of that, use it just as that prompt guide, maybe some inspiration of things you might want to try, things you definitely wouldn't try based on my experience with it. I would also love to hear your kind of favorite moments from April within your classrooms, your lesson plans, your research projects, whatever is happening on your campus, your school. Leave a comment and tell me a little bit of a story from your month as we went through. All right, I'm really excited. Let's hop into Canvas. All right, so hopping into Canvas, I am in my student view, student mode, but this is my main Canvas shell for the classes that I am teaching this semester. Typically, and technically, I do have a 4-4 load, but I actually had one course buyout over the spring to do a special fellowship project with my Office of the Provost. So I only have 3 sections of the same class, and they are all this upper or lower division kind of second level writing course, intro to tech writing, that is kind of specific to our engineering, computer science, game design, those types of majors. This is kind of the second level writing class that they take. So in terms of what I was up to in April, I like to lay out all my course materials on my page into this little table, and as I go I highlight and basically make each of the links live. And so April was really for us spring break and on. Our spring break was incredibly late, so the very end of March. So April was basically these kind of 4 weeks, and then we started May with the project check weeks. So what my students were up to is we did, some intro to research, usability. We learned about, formal reports and presentations throughout that time. In terms of the projects that were due, really they were in this group 3, and then there was also one media project option. And so they were working on either a recommendation report or a usability report. Or they could choose research, visual brief, and an LLM challenge report. Now, one thing that I do in my class is it's more of an XP based grade. So instead of out of 100% expecting students to do all of the work, I set it up to where they have choices, and there's way more projects and points than, they need to earn an A, for example, because I do want them to focus on which types of projects are going to relate the most to their career paths, interests, and skill sets. Since as a gen ed course, but in a kind of a narrow focus, I do have, about half my students are on the engineering track and, are going to need things more like probably recommendation feasibility reports. The other half are in more of that design, computer science, UX path, and they are going to likely experience more usability reporting. And so with that split, I do try to make all these projects a little bit more tailored for each side of the field so they can actually kind of choose and match up their careers. So they're kind of making those choices, but they also could choose not to do any of them. If they are fine getting a C in the class, then they can just choose to do like the really small projects and get basically just enough to pass. It's completely up to them what they want to do with that. So these were kind of the options that we were working through. And so, for example, we meet once a week. And so in April, we had a few kind of key labs that were pretty fun. This research day, we, focused on, I always like to do connection to my class, kind of look ahead, and then we focused on strategies of research and how to find data stories. And actually on this day, my department chair had joined the class, and this was what we did for my teaching evaluation, which actually went pretty swell. So we could see I had this little calendar of exactly what we were doing in April for my students. And so every single week they had a lab reflection due just after class, kind of exit ticket type of thing. They did a document analysis due every Wednesday, which is me just pulling, a real world professional example of the genres we were talking about. And they had to go in and kind of comment on it. And then they had their reading quizzes based on the chapters. They also turned in a progress report assignment. So because there is so much choice and flexibility in my class, as we got into April, it was extremely important for them to stop and make sure they really knew exactly where they were at and how many projects they needed to plan to do to get the grade that they wanted. So they turned in those progress reports as soon as we got back from spring break to kind of start this last month of the semester. And then they had the choice to do a recorded presentation, and now they turned in all of their projects at the beginning of May. So it just really worked out really nicely. When it comes to all of my materials, like I really like to go in and connect things. I call it the IRL connection to class section. And I think that works really, really well. So when I'm thinking about what goes well, what do I want to keep doing in the future, it's definitely building in these like ways to review content while building those connections back to their, kind of real or outside of class sort of thinking that a lot of people really think positively on. And then after I do that, every single week, we get into the actual activities related to that unit. So this was on research. So we just went through a bunch of partner activities, discussions, tasks, watching little videos, using Slidos to go through. And so all of that I really, really liked and I think was successful for my past month. Yeah, so that's basically what I was up to. When you see it in the modules view, it's where they have all their project options that they could choose and we're working on the whole time, progress report. And then, yeah, every single week, we just kind of see how those modules line up. And that brings us into basically May. Cool. All right. So that is how my classroom time went. Now let's actually hop into my bullet journal and time to really reflect on how well I got done with some of my big objectives, a lot of my goals, while you kind of look back over your month and think about those same questions. All right, so looking back into my journal again, this is the first time I've done like a proper bullet journal setup. I've always just used pre-printed planners in the past. So I'm kind of, it's still been kind of a whole situation, quarter of trying to figure out what it is that is going to work for me. And so here was my little calendar layout for May or for April, which I definitely, there's lots of things that I tested and didn't like about it. So I like to start my weeks on Sundays because I just like to get my headspace right, especially because my main lab days are on Monday. I also start my students, things are due Saturdays, so that way they start their week on Sundays. But even with a Saturday due date for things, everybody gets an automatic 48-hour extension. So if they needed to turn it on Sunday or Monday night, they could, without penalty there. And then after Monday, it's closed, but they can use a one super extension chance. So starting on Sunday definitely was good. I started tracking the like lunar cycle. I had these random stamps, and I actually really actually enjoyed that a lot. Just every morning, just check in, hey, where's the moon at today, and putting that in there, which is kind of a fun thing that I like to do. This side, I just spaced out my pages incorrectly. You can see I stopped using it. I was just like, I don't know, maybe I could put my gym workouts or random stuff there, but I ended up really not using it at all. And then I liked to do a little midweek check-in as I sort of went through. And so as part of that retrospective, thinking about, okay, what were some of the choices that I made and how did they work out? So, for example, that first week, I felt like I was really productive. And so the weather was really bad though. I didn't get a walk. So those are things that I'm looking forward to in May, is like just walking to campus a lot more and being out and about. Then I had a pretty like slow, calm week because I didn't have anything to grade these 2 weeks with the ways that I, kind of set up those big project units. But I definitely wrote a lot about kind of feeling not as productive and struggling a bit. So I want to like think about why and what was kind of getting in the way of those. All right. So I said we started with intro to research and data, and I had sort of a back to the garage was my playlist and kind of vibe. And so some of the things that I needed to do, right? I needed to post some grades, work on a provost report, draft an article, which we did end up submitting, which was great, and submit a grant proposal, which I've already heard back. I did not advance to the next round, but we miss all the shots we don't take, so I'm glad that I got that done. Things that I also liked about this spread, I like coloring or like designing and filling in these decor on every day as part of my morning, so we'll see that continue. But I definitely also stopped tracking any stats. I wanted to try a AM, PM, night kind of scheduling for my tasks, but I found that actually wasn't that helpful, so I do stop doing that as well. But I definitely, I checked off quite a few things. So even though I wrote about not feeling very productive, I mean, I did get like a lot of stuff done. All right, so then in week 12, this was our usability testing week, and my students turned in their progress reports. Because that lab was a lot of practice user testing, I focused on a collab and focus no lyrics playlist, which was pretty fun. But I was definitely in that mood of, in terms of my quote for the week, and I see fire burning, Auburn on the mountainside, from The Hobbit. Soundtrack, Ed Sheeran, because this week, especially with their progress reports, I definitely had a lot of students have that kind of feeling about them of, oh my gosh, panic mode. I maybe should have worked a little bit harder in the first half of the semester. And so I think they sort of saw it was really time to pick it up. But yeah, I mean, even though I said I wasn't productive, I got everything graded. I submitted that grant. I downloaded and edited a bunch of videos for my fellowship, created a new mini lecture, like redid some reading assignments. So that actually felt pretty good. Like, I need to give myself more credit looking back. Ooh, this was probably one of a top spread. I really liked this dreamy kind of moon layout. And so this was week 13, which we focused on technical and analytical reports. I went with kind of an upbeat vibes and remixes playlist to try to get myself and everyone back in like a happy headspace. And my quote for the week, which is why it's such like a dreamy moonscape layout, was my dreams might let me know all the stars are closer, because we are, really starting to get down to the final elements of the semester. Their projects were really starting to come together, and so it was kind of that uplifting, like we're almost there. In terms of my big goals, that again I checked off pretty well. I did a talk for the Faculty Resource Center on my campus. I did a workshop on Gemini and other just like ed tech kind of tools and how I use it in my workflow. And so it went really, really well. And I had to just prepare and get that done on that AI Appy Hour. And I just had like a bunch of meetings. I helped some colleagues set up their new Canvas shell, kind of demoed how the just HTML and tools that I use to put my pages together, and then worked on some different prepared grading materials and some other strategic reports. So that was another pretty like successful week that worked well. And I actually really liked this layout of the spread a little bit more. I got rid of the AM PM kind of side of things, and just made a list, and I got like a lot of stuff done. You notice I like to put different colors for each day so I can see, when I go back and actually complete stuff. Like it took me all the way until Friday to update my plant journal as we're getting ready to prepare the garden. All right. Now, this was my very favorite in terms of decoration for the month. This was week 14, and my students did verbal presentations. And so because they were in the lab and activity, kind of working through those elements, we just did film scores to study vibes, because they also said they had a lot of big tests coming up. My quote, because I was just feeling happy, free, very pink and flowery, was "Watch me dance the night away. I stay on the beat, you can count on me, I ain't missing no steps." Because also, and as I had reflected actually in that video, was, what, I do feel like, especially at the end of the semester, being a teacher, that I need to perform, all right? And at this stage of the semester, it's like they're looking to me to kind of help, push them through the end, and it does create kind of a sense of pressure, I guess, to always be on beat, don't miss any steps, like, and step up for my students as they're starting to, really burn out and get those summer vibes and itches as well. We had a bunch of candidate forums for our dean search on campus this week, so I made sure to like listen in on those and give people feedback and try to be an active participant on my campus. But I like checked off a lot of stuff, so really liked this. I needed to finalize an article. I didn't check it off, but we did do that. Apply to a job. We'll find out in May if I get an interview for that. Finish some comms audit for my special fellowship, and just work on my research pilot for Teacher's Pet, actually. And part of all these demos that I was doing and getting ready for across my campus was try to recruit some pilot testers and research kind of elements there. All right. And that is, through the end of April. So then I set up my May calendar. And so you see I spaced things out a lot better with my big, important stuff that I'll need to do on this side. I still like doing the moon kind of vibe, so I am going to continue filling in my lunar progression every single day. I just think that was fun, but definitely leaving a little bit more space for like these big things that are happening at the end of the week. And then for the first half, right, April 27th through May 3rd, so where we're ending up now, went with a very sort of construction-y journaly theme. And for week 15 of my semester, which was project checks, the end of my unit, we did Fast Family vibes, just a very international, Fast and Furious inspired playlist to try to keep everyone's energy up as they were finishing their reports. And so my quote was, "Put your drinks up. It's a celebration every time we link up. Greatness is what we're on the brink of." I wish that I could have this moment for life, since March is the end of the unit, end of the biggest, hardest unit. April definitely is tough for my students because we are working on their really big reports that, is kind of accumulation of everything they've learned from this semester. And it's like they're just on the brink of greatness, but they have to get through it. I did a bunch of ungrading talks with my faculty resource center that also demoed our rubric building app and tool at Teacher's Pet. Submitted an article. My co-author and I had already been accepted to the conference for our work, but then we decided to turn it into an article for their same, like that conference's proceedings. I was getting ready to grade all of the reports, which for me involved, recording some podcast audio of me walking through the rubric and that kind of stuff. And then I started to update my watermark, which is the platform we use for performance reviews. Now I started this week actually having a little space where I could check off all of my different tasks. And then I broke it into like an AM and a PM. Tried to go back to that. Again, it really didn't end up using the like AM PM side. I just don't quite work in that way, so it was a little bit more free for all, but I liked having this space to check everything off. And then I had my sort of daily little place to decorate as a way to start my morning over on this side. Cool. All right. And that then brings us into May, but you'll have to come back next month when it's time for me to revisit everything that I accomplished in May. All right, so before we go, I do have a special prompt, one little challenge prompt that I encourage us all to try and accomplish now that we've kind of gone through, right? How did those last months and units and whatnot go? Thinking about our assessment, thinking about our process, thinking about lessons learned. And so our prompt for May, as we are wrapping up that semester, maybe starting to think about things that could change as we're going to start to get our course evaluations and all that feedback in as the semester or the academic year ends. Our special challenge, what I challenge you to do, what I'll be working on in May, is select one thing from one project in your class that you want to focus on changing. So try that for May, and at the end of May, we'll go back and do a retrospective and see what is that one thing that we decided to change to help keep our iterative process, our course design moving forward. I'm really excited to hear and see what you do. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on my April retrospective for my time teaching and learning. I'm Haley at Teacher's Pet, and I hope you join me next month. Also, every Friday, join me here on the channel to plan out our bullet journals together. This is my first time creating my own bullet journal instead of using sort of predated planners, and so it's been a really fun journey for me. Every Friday I'll be working on my new spread, and when we do that I'll also be chatting and telling you about a lesson plan idea, a project, or just a story from my classroom. I really want you to come back and tell me your stories in classrooms every Friday. Until then, thanks for being here, and I hope you have a great class.